EPA finds toxic forever chemicals in several water systems across America. All over America, our water could be contaminated. And the sad thing is, it's with something that the ground just can't clean up on its own. Well, where did this forever chemical come from? And what are we gonna do to protect our families and protect ourselves? Because guess what? We see that the exposure of these forever chemicals to you and your family can cause cancer, could cause death, could cause major sicknesses, could cause pregnancy irregularities, could be very detrimental to us. And a lot of it's really our fault. So let's jump into it today. This is a very serious video because I want you to understand that if we can't control our food system and our water system and what keeps us thriving, then all the other stuff is really for naught. We could talk about money, we can talk about freedom, we can talk about politics, but really when it comes down to it, it's what can sustain life. Water is the biggest asset for that. Let's jump into it. Today's video starts right now.
About to leave.
Hey guys, welcome to the Max. Thank you so much for being here today. If you're new to the channel, go down here, press subscribe, ring the bell, give us a thumbs up or a thumbs down, that's okay, but let us know what you think about this video. Now, let's get to the serious topic of today. Water, the sustainability of water. How life and health all depends on water and making sure we have clean water to drink. We worry about having clean drinking water in all the third world countries, and we invest tons of dollars to provide wells for them, and we should be doing that. A lot of church groups and religious groups do the same thing. However, we're now seeing that our water is not clean in America. And again, it's really our fault. So let's jump into the forever chemicals and this story that could be very eye-opening. So if you haven't done any research, look at PFAS or PFOS. Usually it's capital P-F-A-S or P-F-O-S. And we talked about some of these chemicals in another water video that we did. These forever chemicals cannot just be cleaned by the ground. So a lot of times when we have contaminants in water through small filtrations or city municipalities, or simply just going through rivers and creeks, this water can pretty much clean up itself. There's been stories and studies done that this is a forever chemical, and it not only gets into your water, it gets into the animals. We've heard farms, and you could do your own research. I think Vice News did a whole documentary on it where PFOS was in the water, and all of a sudden it got in all the cattle, and they were not able to sell beef. They had to basically slaughter the herd and get rid of them. And that land, because that land has got PFOS on it, you're not able to ever farm that land with agricultural anymore, because it is something that can't be removed from the ground, or so far no one has been able to do it. So is our tap water safe? Well, we've talked about bottled water. It's not safe because of the chemicals they're using to build the bottles, and also the heat and expanding of the plastic. So let's go back and talk about, how do we know that our forever chemical is not in our water? And if it is, what are some of the ways that we can try and get better quality drinking water? And how serious is this? I'm reading from an article from Zero Hedge. It says EPA finds toxic forever chemicals in water systems across America. On August 17th, findings come after the U.S. Geological Survey found in July that PFAS, it has a big long name that I can't pronounce, were found in 45% of water taps in the U.S. 45%. That's almost half of America. We have found this forever chemical that cannot be removed from the ground through typical sediment. It's in your water. It's contaminated your water. This controversial chemical was made in a lot of manufacturing plants. I know DuPont and 3M were some of the ones that were utilizing it, and they've done documentaries on it. But there's been a lot of companies that's passed regulation that pretty much releases this back into our waterways, and actually it's causing major detriment. So do I believe in the capitalist society? Do I believe that we should be able to manufacture and make goods here? Yes. However, we can't do it to the detriment. I laugh because we hear people talk about how fossil fuels are going to kill us and we shouldn't be harvesting them. However, that is a natural resource. Here we are making plastics and making all this man-made versions of things, and pretty much we're causing more detriment to the environment. So let's do a little research there when it comes to building new man-made products versus just harvesting the ones that God created, such as the fossil fuels. But I digress. The EPA reported that the toxins could affect drinking water of over 26 million people. PFAS, this chemical, is used in several things such as household cleaning products, even down to pizza boxes, which broadens the chance of serious health risks. Remember, we're taking in these things and these products and we're utilizing in our home. That's why I go back and say you have to start using more quality organic cleaning materials, quality organic foods, and think about what your food is actually contained in. We don't think about that. We just want the convenience. A lot of times convenience is what causes a lot of these issues, because we want those conveniences, so then we're willing to sacrifice maybe our health, and we don't realize that there's nothing we can do with this chemical if it gets in the ground and oversaturates a certain area. If it gets above that exposure and health risk, there's nothing we can do. Another part of this Zero Hedge article, it says samples in Fresno had 16 parts per trillion of PFOAs and 29 parts per trillion of PFOS, which are both these chemicals, which was 4 and 7.25 times more than the EPA's proposed regulatory limit. This also was found in Dallas's water as well. The chemicals were found in about 70% of areas that are either urban or have had a known history of PFAS contamination, compared to just 8% in rural areas. So this may not affect people in rural areas as much. Now, I still think you should be precautionary. Again, as a prepper, as someone who wants to live sustainable, I think we have to look at every option on the board. But especially if you're in urban areas and city areas and you're dependent on that water to come from your municipality, you need to be very wary and make sure that you're taking all precautions possible. Exposures to PFAS. It can be linked to kidney and testicular diseases or cancers or severe illnesses. Thyroid disease, high cholesterol can reduce births and cause major irregularities in pregnant women. Now, I want you to do your own research. If you watch a lot of the studies on PFAS, a lot of it was still swept under the rug for years because of big business. Now, do I believe, again, in a capitalist society, do I believe that everyone should be able to do things with a lot less regulation? Yes. But at some point in time, there has to be someone looking at the safety of these man-made chemicals and these man-made inventions. Anytime man does something to provide, I think of bottled water. We talked about this the other day. Here we are trying to give you purified filtered water, all the while all you're doing is getting city municipality water in a cheap plastic bottle that actually has more chemicals. So we're worried about chemicalized water, and all of a sudden we're worried about a bottled now that's made with chemicals that's holding the water. Do you realize every aspect of your life, if you're having to buy a lot of your food or you're having to shop for it, the way that things stay on the shelf in the grocery store is because of chemicals and preservatives, not only in the food, but maybe in the packaging. Have you ever thought about that? How dangerous is the packaging on what we're buying? How dangerous is the big manufacturing hubs that put out this stuff in the air, or the exposure of chemicals released back in the waterways? Think about that for a second. And if you think about forever chemicals, this is not like chlorine. Even though I don't believe in chlorine, this is not like some of the other typical earth sediments that could cause you sickness if all of a sudden, if it's too much in your water. That can cause some issues. But when you turn around and say, okay, this is not natural sediment, this is man-made chemicals that now we can't figure out how to get out of certain areas, what are we to do? So you need to look at a filtration system. This is something for your whole house. Don't just depend on the one in your fridge. Now, for instance, we're on a well, and I've always said I didn't want any filtration because it's not really sustainable. I don't have a way to have a sustainable filtration system for here on out unless I'm always buying filters. So we're gonna have to start prepping filters because we didn't want to put any kind of extra filtration on our well, because our well is 150 foot deep. We're in an area that doesn't have a lot of manufacturing, and like this study, it's very uncommon in some rural areas. However, I want to protect our family. If we work so hard to protect our animals and we work so hard to protect our food system locally, what's to say that if we all of a sudden are doing all those right things and then we still have contaminated water, and then we're gonna have major issues based on that. So all the other stuff we did was for naught. Now, our cows, our lambs, our sheep, our pigs, all that is off the same well. So our goal now is to say, okay, if we can put a filtration on the well and we can have enough filters and we can have reverse osmosis, and we can look at certain filters that will help us get rid of PFOS if it's in our areas, or PFAE or whatever it is, If we can take as much chemical out of that water as possible and we can go straight into our animals and to our water, then we know we have a better chance of being safe. Think about all the health risks that we've had, and we've talked about this with food. We had a video last week talking about, you know what you're eating when you're thinking hot dogs. Well, the more we depend on that convenience and the more we don't want to raise our own food, the more our health really is going to be at risk. There was a study done the other day that showed that advertising on TV, on cable network, on cable TV, 75% of it is dealing with pharmaceuticals. Why do you think they want such a foothold in America? Why do you think and that's not something that's common across the world. This is just in America. Well, if we are constantly contaminated, we are constantly having bad quality food and water, we're constantly being exposed to all these things that we shouldn't be exposed to, all this man-made chemicals, what's happening is our bodies are getting exposed to more illness, to more cancers, and to more sicknesses that need some kind of medication to even make it anymore. To me, it's like a full circle of life. So I go back to that first point I made. Water is a natural resource. Fossil fuels, natural resource. And we can go down a list of natural resources that we have here in America and in most parts of the world. Instead, we want to dog certain parts of that out, and then we start making all these manufacturing jobs to produce these chemicals to make life easier, and all the while we're tainting the earth that we wanted to save. Now we're tainting the one thing that brings life, and it's water. Without water, we have nothing. Without drinking water, we have nothing. Nothing is good. So I challenge you, you need to look at filters. You need to look at some kind of either charcoal filters, reverse osmosis filters. That's the ones that I've known more about. To be honest with you, I don't know enough about some of these filters. You need to look at some of these specs on these filters, and you may have to spend some pretty good money and overstock some replacement filters for it, because if you have forever chemicals, especially if you're in municipalities and cities, then it may be a good option to say, you know what? I need to buy some kind of filtration system for my home. You may can afford a testing kit, great, look at doing a testing kit. There may be a city water or municipality that kind of tests things and puts in your local paper. But remember, a lot of the PFOS and the PFAS and all those chemicals from the early years, I think a lot of times our government knew they were already there and they did nothing about it. Now that it's being exposed, we're hearing more about it. But let's think. This is just one form of chemical that's causing these issues. Think about all the food, think about all the water, think about everything that is produced to preserve your food, to preserve your water, and to get it to you packaged conveniently at a store. How many more chemicals are we taking in our body that's causing the same issues? We're seeing cancer, we're seeing obesity. We talked about this in a video not too long ago. So if we're seeing it in our water, are we going to start seeing it in other parts of our food system? All because we wanted convenience. All because we didn't want to do the work ourselves. All because we didn't try to prepare a little bit better to take care of our families. Nothing against anyone living in a city, but do you honestly believe we were ever supposed to be millions upon millions upon millions in this metro city, and you think that's going to be safe? Think about sewage. Think about water treatment. Think about the piping underneath. Think about all those elements. Do we honestly believe everything in that city is going to be safe and healthy? There is one well with one pipe running to my house. Now that doesn't make it safe, but I have a better chance of that being safe and me going from one pipe to one home. When we talk about cities and bigger areas, you may have one treatment plant running, one sewage plant running out, and it's surrounded by manufacturing. What actually is in your water and what's in your food? What's in your ground? These forever chemicals, they can't be rid of yet. So now I put it on you. You better start buying glass water if you can. If you can buy glass bottled water, great. If you can find good quality filters, great. The only way to get rid of that is through those items. Buying your water, which is not sustainable, but also making sure you have a filtered system. And you need to make sure you have a lot of filter replacements to cover yourself. So do some research. I have to do my research too, because to be honest with you, the more I read into this, the more it kind of scares the living daylights out of me. But we can't just depend on these studies to teach us everything. We have to do our own research and find, okay, if we believe there's PFOS in our ground, or we believe there's PFAS in the ground, or we believe there's some other kind of forever chemical that we don't know about yet, what are ways that we can take care of our family and make sure we're doing all that we can to not be exposed to the dangers that sometimes conveniences and modern ways of life has caused us. It's in your water. I'm not trying to scare you. All I'm doing is just telling you what our government has just found in our waters. Now it's time for you to say, okay, I'm going to be reactionary and proactive, and we're going to find ways to try to take care of our personal water. Filtration, or just buying a lot of it. Try to get to the glass bottles, because if you're buying these plastic water bottles, I don't know if you're helping yourself too much. So, startling news this morning, but there is ways to get rid of it based on filtration. But if you go back to my other video, a lot of city municipalities don't have the quality filtration that they're needing to get rid of everything, such as antibiotics, such as the drugs, the pills, and the narcotics that is going into our sewer systems and our treatment plants. So if you can get rid of one thing, what about all the other stuff? So filtered water, looking at ways to make sure your water is safe, is the key to life, especially to our physical bodies. Guys, thank you so much for watching. Give me your thoughts. Have you heard of PFOS? Have you heard this in your municipality? Have you heard this in your city? Have you tested your wells for it? Let me know in the comments below what you think about this. And should we be worried? What else should we do other than buying filtration systems? Personally, I've got one in an undisclosed location, but I'm fixing to buy one personally for our house, just to be on our well, to make sure all the water, not just what we're drinking in the home, but that what my animals are taking in is safe. Guys, thank you for watching. God bless. Happy homesteading, y'all.
Be free with me.